Okay, so let's unpack this 2024 election.
Uh,
I think,
yeah.
you know, coming into this deep dive, you wanted to understand how we got here. Like,
Right.
what even happened? Why were the polls so off the mark?
Totally.
Well, we dug into some analysis from the Pod Save America team
Okay.
to try and get a clearer picture.
Yeah, it's interesting. They pointed out this global trend
Hmm.
of incumbent leaders losing
Yeah,
in the post-pandemic world. And it's happening kind of across the political spectrum
yeah,
on almost every continent.
right. They tie that to like this economic anxiety,
Yeah.
this historically bad wrong track feeling, and Biden's approval rating.
hmm
But is that really like the whole story?
I mean, it's a big factor for sure. I think
Yeah,
anyone listening right now can relate to the impact of inflation
for sure.
and the rising cost of living.
Yeah.
These aren't just numbers on a screen. They
Right.
have real-world consequences for people.
Absolutely. But the Pod Save America folks cautioned against just oversimplifying things,
Yeah.
and playing the blame game.
Right.
They pointed to some data that actually like challenges the easy narrative.
Yeah. For example, Kamala Harris
Okay.
actually had higher approval ratings than Trump
Wow.
and was seen as less extreme by voters.
So much for her being a drag on the ticket.
Exactly. The data suggests Biden's low approval was the real problem,
Okay.
not Harris's performance.
Okay.
And even if you look at the Senate and House races,
Yeah.
it's clear voters were making distinctions. It wasn't just this like
Mhm.
blind anti-incumbent wave.
I'm curious to get your take on all this data. Like, what stands out to you?
Well, one trend that I think needs unpacking is the Latino vote.
Yeah.
We've seen Trump gaining ground with this demographic since 2016,
Right.
and it really seems to have accelerated this election.
Like Lawrence, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
A heavily Latino city went from 82% for Clinton in 2016 to only 57% for Harris in this election.
Wow.
What shifted there?
The Pod Save America team debated this, and it's
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
Economic factors are definitely part of it, but I think we also need to look at deeper societal shifts.
Yeah.
And maybe some cultural trends as well.
It seems like there's something more fundamental going on.
Yeah.
And speaking of fundamental shifts,
Right.
the Pod Save America hosts talked about how Trump, even after being president,
Yeah.
still managed to own that like anti-establishment image.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
How he just continues to tap into that sentiment.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to people's frustration with government,
Okay.
this feeling that the system isn't working.
Right.
That's fertile ground for a figure like Trump.
Totally. And it feels like he has this whole
Yeah,
media ecosystem backing him up.
for sure.
The Pod Save America guys were pretty blunt about the right's media network,
Yeah.
which allows them to reach voters that Democrats haven't figured out how to connect with.
They've been really savvy branding themselves as a counterculture
Uh-huh.
while actually pushing pretty traditional values.
Just brilliant strategy.
Yeah.
They pointed to some like mind-blowing examples. Like Dana White,
Oh, yeah.
head of the UFC, appearing at Trump's victory speech,
Right.
and the influence of guys like the Nelk Boys and Aiden Ross.
Yeah.
This is a world that Democrats are really struggling to navigate.
It makes you wonder, what are they missing here? How
Yeah.
do they reach these audiences without compromising their values?
Right.
It's a tough challenge.
It is,
Yeah.
for sure. And this actually connects to something else the Pod Save America hosts were talking about.
Okay.
Like the whole idea of identity politics and whether it's working.
Yeah, they were worried that Democrats are maybe relying too much on those types of appeals.
Okay.
Just focusing on different identity groups.
Right.
Is that really enough to connect with voters these days?
It's an interesting question.
It is.
So do you think it is enough?
I mean, identity matters for sure,
Right.
but I think Democrats have to go beyond that.
Okay.
Like, they need a more unifying economic message
Mhm.
that resonates with people across those demographics.
Yep.
Something that really speaks to people's anxieties and, shared experiences.
So it's more about their lived experiences and hopes for the future,
Exactly.
not just checking off boxes.
Right.
Speaking of things that need a rethink,
Uh-huh.
the Pod Save America hosts were pretty upset about those crypto super PACs.
Oh, yeah, the Ohio Senate race.
Yeah, they spent a ton of money attacking Sherrod Brown.
They did. And it raises a bigger issue about money and politics in general.
Right, like how it makes people feel so disillusioned.
Exactly.
But the interesting thing is,
Yeah.
the Pod Save America team thinks this is something both parties can agree on.
I mean, it's rare to find common ground these days.
Totally.
But campaign finance reform is one of those things
Yeah.
where you actually hear concerns from both Democrats and Republicans.
So maybe something listeners could actually get involved in.
Yeah, for sure. Making your voice heard on that issue could make a difference.
Okay, last thing from the Pod Save America deep dive.
Okay.
And this one was a little surprising. It sounds like foreign policy was actually on some voters' minds,
Really?
even though it wasn't like a central campaign issue.
Interesting.
It wasn't just about the Gaza conflict either,
Okay.
which definitely mattered to some voters,
Right.
especially in some Michigan precincts.
Yeah, Pod Save America said Jill Stein actually got more votes than Harris in those areas.
That's crazy.
It is.
But there also seemed to be a broader anxiety about Ukraine
Yeah.
and this potential for things to escalate.
Right. So it raises this huge question for Democrats.
Yeah.
How do they balance support for democracy abroad
Hmm.
with those very real economic anxieties people have here at home?
Such a tough balance.
It is. And they have to communicate really clearly about it.
And maybe even more importantly,
Yeah.
they need to actually listen to where voters are coming from.
Totally recognizing that people's concerns are valid
Mhm.
and finding ways to address them.
Right. It's not about talking down to people or dismissing their concerns.
No, it's about having a real dialogue.
And building trust, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. Showing them that you understand the challenges they're facing.
This deep dive has been a lot.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all this.
I get it. It's a lot to process.
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel disheartened.
Mm-hmm.
But the Pod Save America guys were pretty clear.
Yeah.
Don't let these feelings paralyze you.
Okay.
Channel them into something constructive.
That's good advice.
Right.
I think taking action is the best way to process all this.
Me too. Understanding these trends,
Yeah.
these things that shapes the election.
Hmm.
It's the first step to building a more effective movement.
So what will you do with all this?
Yeah. What conversations you're going to start.
Right. What actions are you going to take?
This is where the power lies. You know, knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the face of a setback like this,
Right.
there's always hope.
Okay.
We learn from it.
Yeah.
We adapt.
Uh-huh.
And we keep fighting for the future we want.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Awesome.
Until next time, stay curious
Did you engage?
and stay hopeful.
Yeah.
It is easy to just feel defeated,
Right.
but I think you're right. Knowledge is power.
Yeah,
Even when we lose, there's always something to learn.
totally. It's a chance to kind of step back
Yeah.
and analyze like what worked, what didn't,
Mm-hmm.
and think about how to move forward.
The Pod Save America team definitely thinks Democrats need to do a better job connecting with like working class voters.
Yeah, across the board.
Yeah.
Regardless of race or where they live.
They made this point about how Democrats sometimes seem to focus too much
Yeah.
on those college-educated voters.
Right. The ones in cities.
Right. And kind of neglecting those working class communities.
Yeah. In more rural areas.
Almost like they're speaking two different languages.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
There's this cultural divide
Hmm.
that needs to be bridged somehow.
And the Pod Save America guys were saying
Uh-huh.
Democrats need to craft a message
Right.
that really speaks to people's economic anxieties, no matter who they are.
For sure. Issues like job security,
Yeah.
affordable health care,
Mm-hmm.
access to good education.
Right. Things that resonate with everybody.
Exactly.
So it's about meeting people where they are
Yeah.
and offering solutions to their everyday struggles.
Showing them that you understand
Right.
and that you're on their side.
It's a lot to ask,
It is.
but it seems pretty crucial if Democrats want to win back
Yeah.
those voters they've lost.
It's about building a movement that includes everyone
Yeah.
and represents all Americans.
Well, this has been a real eye-opener.
For sure.
I feel like I understand so much more now.
Me too. And I hope you, the listener, are feeling empowered by this.
Right.
Because the first step to fixing a problem is understanding it.
Totally. It's easy to get overwhelmed,
Yeah.
but we all have a role to play here.
Even small actions can make a difference.
Like what?
Talking to your friends and family,
Okay.
volunteering for a cause,
Yeah.
donating to a campaign.
Right. Every little bit helps.
It all adds up.
So it's about staying informed,
Yeah.
staying engaged,
Mm-hmm.
and never giving up hope.
The fight for a better world is a marathon, not a sprint.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the 2024 election.
My pleasure.
It's been quite a journey.
It is stay curious, everyone.
Stay informed.
And